So, I know I do the spiel each time, but we have new people each time. Why do we organize Tales at Retail? A lot of people ask me that. And we essentially started doing this because we feel that, so some of you might know that we specialize in retail, yeah, retail interiors, retail graphics, and all that. And every passing day, we go deeper and deeper into our topic. But creativity is so much bigger, and you draw inspirations from so many different walks of life. So we figured that this is a good thing, like every third Saturday, although this time this is the fourth Saturday, but we work alternate Saturdays, and there is one Saturday we have marked off in our monthly calendar where we will invite somebody who's a creative, innovative person. Could be a book writing coach, could be another entrepreneur, could be like we had somebody from the space of e-governance, helping citizens, and where they use design and innovation in making people's lives easier. So a wide spectrum of speakers who've come and inspired us in how they use creativity and innovation in different walks of life, how really making this world a better place, right? So that's how we started that, so that we can open our minds beyond what we do, which is also a very creative endeavor. But how is it that people use creativity as a tool to solve so many problems, so many different problems? So we've had people from tech, people in AI and all that. And while it would have been very intuitive that we would have had architects and designers upfront, but I think officially, Lavanya, you're the first architect that we have as a speaker. So I think special
Thank you.
clap for that. And now about Lavanya. I'm not going to regale you with her career background and stuff like that. I'll tell you how I first met. So some of you know that I was part of a network called BNI. Yeah, I was there for quite some time. So BNI, every chapter has 2 minimum or 3, 4 architects / designers. Okay. And when I was there were like 25, 30 odd chapters. So you can just multiply the numbers. And you sort of knew that when you went to a networking event, you will find so many architects / interior designers. But at the end of it, there are some people that you instantly, you see them across the room and you connect. And Lavanya was one such, right? So I think we've been in our heads thinking of each other as friends from day one, even before we probably exchanged 10 sentences, so that's how it's been. And so there is a WhatsApp group that Lavanya has facilitated, and there's so many of us who are part of it. And we keep seeing the amazing work that she and her team do, right? They are not a lip service kind of an outfit that talks about sustainability on a superficial level, right? They go so deep. You see the work, you see the kind of knowledge and intelligence and connection that comes across in the way she talks about her work. Very simply, very non-boastful, very not using sustainability as like a label. It's not a label in the way Lavanya and team practice it at Studio Alaya. And they've gone the next mile, going beyond design, actually making things, right? And at the end of it, we all realize that when we make things, whether directly through us or through somebody else, vendor, supplier, when we are involved in the process, right, all of you will agree with me, how much more we understand how things ought to be, or how they ought to be used and created. And, that's how we really improve our game. So in short, Lavanya, who is an architect from MSU Baroda, and she's practiced architecture for a long, long, long time. How long time?
24 years.
24 years, a quarter of a century almost. Yeah. And the other common ground when I was talking to her, I found is that we both moved here for work, to Bangalore, just like that, on a lark. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do that, And that's how she moved to Bangalore. She wanted to work with Shah Rukh and Renu Mistry. She wanted to work with Chitra of Biome. And, she's so focused about that. And over her career, and she'll share with us a little bit of it, she's practiced, and then she's worked with organizations, and then she's practiced on her own. Really, the feel that you get of running your own agency is something which is, in a way, not exactly the same as being a designer. It's an extension of being a designer, right? Either you are a business person first, that's a debate that we always have, or you are a designer first. And I think she's been in the bucket where she's seen herself as a designer first, and some of our teams, that's the kind of conversation we struggle with ourselves as well. So at this, I'm going to close what I'm saying, and I'm going to ask Lavanya to come and share with us what she has prepared to share with us this morning. And thank you, Lavanya, for being here.
Thank you, Joey.
Yes,
Love you all. Thank you so much. Um, she's already said so much, and I am not here to talk about the business part or any of that. I thought, how many of us here are designers or architects? By the raise of hand. So quite a lot of you. And the intention is to speak and share my understanding of where we do what we do and how we enjoy the work we do. Yeah, so 24 plus years back, I always knew that my love was for the natural world, and there was something to do with nature that kind of resonated and made me feel very good inside in my heart. And that's what I wanted to do as a practitioner the minute I said I'm an architect. In fact, even before I knew I was an architect. And that's why, like she said, that I was drawn to Mistri Architects and Chitra, and I wanted to see how they are able to bring a connection between the natural world and architecture. And the curiosity brought me here, and today we have a little, practice of our own that we call Studio Alaya, where we design and we build these simply designed buildings. So sustainability, we all talk about it. It's a very overhyped word, and I perhaps didn't even know the term the time that I even wanted to practice natural buildings. I just knew that they had to be more connected to the environment around, and that's all that made sense to me. What made sense to me was that it just had to be buildings that made a lot of sense, and they needed to feel really good. So it's always been the feel good aspect, and which I also see in retail's work, that that's one of the reasons I said yes, we are here, is what we have always strived to get to, and how we feel and how we translate that, I'd like to share with you today. It's that part of the sensitivity is where we say sustainability and sensitivity. It's less about sustainability and more about sensitivity, how sensitive we are to what happens without and within, in all three ways. Okay, thank you. So this is the basis on which I have always looked at design and work, and you call it sustainable design. Sustainability, unfortunately, post the pandemic, has been a term that has got overused and overrated to in a way where most of us have lost faith in the idea of it. And there is nothing about building that really is sustainable, but it's design that makes most of it have a meaning. Let's use the word meaning rather than sustenance. So the way I go about, I use this term RAILS, and rethinking what we want, how much we want, what do the people who approach us, do they really need what they're asking for? We re-go through their entire expectations, make them connect with them deeper, and try to understand the whys and the whats, and then come to the decision of this is what we're designing for. And that's what I think should be the way to approach it. It was always by traditions that we saw that traditionally courtyards worked, the way they worked. How is it that we could bring it back into the modern and the more contemporary context and innovate in a way that it made more sense in terms of climatic appropriateness, less about vastu and more about it being just right and feeling right? Including so we live in a capitalist time where nothing else is important except for the fact that everybody make money. But does everybody make money? Where are the skilled people, where are the skilled craftsmen, where are the laborers that really knew their work, and are we really helping them hone their skills better, that they are able to improve in their life, economic, socio-economic strata as well? So to be including the local into their work and helping them improve their craftsmanship is also something that we see. And get advice and learning from them, because it's always a two-way process. Using local materials and techniques, and local doesn't mean in the city of Bangalore you get everything everywhere. It's always, the local means as local as the site itself. So on the property that we stand, what does that property or that land offer you, and what of it can you use to its absolute best advantage without really destroying too much or disrupting too much, and just being very subtle and humble about the whole connection with it. And of course, climatically sensitive approach is a very big key to. But climatology was my favorite subject in college, and I don't know why, but I really got really kicked with it. So climate appropriateness is the next thing that makes best sense. So it's these bases that I feel sustainable design works. And why I say design and not buildings, because the focus maybe has come on to lot to onto the buildings than it is to the design itself. And I may admit that in spite of working with the mentors I have, what I realized and what I accepted is that design was more important to me than the material itself. The material is secondary, the material is the assistant. It is like the design is your heart, and your mind or your brain is the slave. And the material is also the slave. It is assisting the design, it is not the primary aspect. And though it comes across so, it is not the primary. Where today's day the conversation has become too much about material, as vis-a-vis what it really should be about is design. And where is it about design, I'd like to share. So I'm just sharing 3 projects and how we've gone through these, the journey of the design with these projects, and happy to take questions from you. Do you think it's a good idea to pause after each and get questions, or after all? A couple of questions, maybe. Present the first one, then we can take a call. Because questions can become open-ended. Yeah. Guys, you want a notebook or something, you can capture your questions on your phone or something. Yeah. As you have. We'll take them at the end now. No problem. You have a flow. So Good Bricks Company, very unlike what it is. So a lot of you must already know what CACB and SMB is. Do you know? Say yes or no. Yeah. So Good Bricks Company decided to manufacture the CACB blocks, earth blocks, at an industrial level, which kind of contradicts the purpose of the earth blocks, but with the right sense, being that he saw the intention, and Ravi Kumar is the owner. He saw the intention that he wanted it to be a material that was available for people that wanted to build houses in very congested localities where there was no space to be able to make these earth blocks. And all he needed was a small little office space, and he didn't really know what he wanted of it, but he needed somewhere where he could call an office space. So this is where the property is located. The factory was already in function, and it's very beautifully located right around the Nandi Hills. And now the factory is like so, and the office is just that little tiny little bit. Does this point? I don't know. So how we approached it is this way: that we wanted you to have a built. It's okay. This way. Okay, cool, no problem. So this is we just decided to make it a very simple structure. They didn't really know what they wanted or how much not. So in terms of a planning, all we did was have a built in the center, a semi-built on one end, and an open space in the back towards the end of the property. And that's all. The semi-open was to become a workshop, interactive space for prospective customers, students, for them to do little workshops, because what the factory allowed people is to have different sizes and shapes of these earth blocks, which were still stabilized and well compressed. There was this one grill which kind of mimics the jali that happens in the back, and didn't want to color it anything else. Yellow seemed to be subtlest because it's just the oxide, there was no paint on it. And they louver opened for the inside and the outside, this outside space and that to kind of become one. And that's how they open up and allow you the interaction. And as soon as one arrives into this workshop area, one sees all the different possibilities with the material. Of course, we had to add a skylight because there has to be a lot of light. I'm obsessed with light. And that's how the material kind of fell in. You came into an office. I really wanted to do an earth flooring, but the client is like, I think I've had enough of earth. Please give me a color. And that's why we did a handmade, hand done yellow oxide flooring, because we already had the yellow, and then we kind of entwined it. And even the wood had linseed oil polish done. We wanted to keep it as low on its carbon footprint as possible without it impacting in any way. Even the client felt very strongly about it. And then that's the backyard space around the trees that were already there. And the roof was the vault that we made out of the same earth blocks, right? So in totality we used about steel, or about 1 ton of steel in the entire house, in the entire building, and we didn't seem to need more because there was no necessity to have more than that. About 70-80,000 rupees is what we might have spent. I'm going to move to the next project, which was Swasti. We can take them later. Yeah. And if I'm boring you, we'll take a pause and we'll ask questions. Swasti was a house that we did for a single mother who was a dancer and 2 young children. She wanted to feel like a queen in her own house because she just came out of a very painful separation, and wanted to be able to enjoy this little piece of land that she inherited from the marriage. But the property had a lot of complications with the slum dwellers around, who were really, there was a major rowdy things happening at the property. So we had a limitation because of it. But I'll come to that later. Again, this site, about 60 feet by 60 feet, a good square, had 2 trees that lived already. And I have a thing for trees. They already are living there, and there is no business I have in moving them. Besides the fact, I'm very happy that our clients also seem to resonate and love the idea of trees, and therefore we wanted them to be there. They should have to live there. So the obvious decision on a design would have been to have maybe a rectangle sitting or a squarish building sitting on a square property. But what this does not allow was for her to have some privacy. And after having gone through the ordeal that she had in her personal life, what she needed was a lot of privacy. Unfortunately, her sister-in-law lived right next doors. So that needed ex-sister-in-law. So there was needed of that. And plus there were a lot of apartments and full highly built structures around. So there needed to be a breather. And hence what we did is kind of askew the building and stagger it, so that we created these pockets on 2 ends, which allowed her to have a little more green pockets around, plus also allowed the trees to be. So 1 tree there and 1 tree there, so they're doing their own thing. And we have, this could be a parking and a front garden, and that became the back garden. Kaustuba color coded everything, so thank you for that. The living, the darker grays are the living spaces, broken by a little semi-public space of the puja and a little workstations, and then a large space of the dining and the kitchen. The intention was for her to allow her to dance across the house, because she is a real intent dance lover and a teacher. And then the sleeping spaces in the back. Oops, nobody's moving. Yeah. The only thing that we thought would add value, and which one would not do usually, is add this little triangular annexation to the living area, which allowed me to have a direct connect with the African tulip tree right here, and open the living into the garden. Because the building was askew, we did not want to lose that. Those are the plans where one enters into the foyer, comes into the living, the askew part kind of connects here, and that becomes the whole garden area. This, the puja and a skylit study area, the dining and the kitchen space, and the sleeping space on the ground floor, and the utilities in the back. And that tree, I'll show you how that works in the back. There's a section through the house, and all that there is basically the stairwell bringing lights in, and we have some different kind of roofs that we incorporated here. She had a fascination of a Spanish house, but I did not. I'm not really into copying and pasting things, so it took me some time to make her understand that if I just took the aspects of Spain, which was the natural materials, the curves in the roofs, and some very black metal bodied openings, it kind of resonated with it without it being really Spanish, but being more her. The other limitation that we had at the site was that the soil was of a very different texture, which meant that working with the earth for the building in terms of the material that the site gave was actually a little high on terms of the pocket and the expenses. So we did not want to make it economically difficult, and therefore decided to use an ordinary red burnt table mold brick, and ordinary as in that time it was a 9 rupee brick, and try to make that the material that we built with. But because we were building with the brick, and I'm never comfortable with using a table mold brick as much because of its higher carbon footprint, we decided to make the most of it and turn it into what is called as a rat trap bond wall, which allows not only better insulation from the whereabouts, but also helped us in reducing 1/3 of the material in terms of the cement mortar as well as the bricks. This was the mason that she limited us with. She said, you have to have him work on this project because he's the only person who cares for this property and will guard it from the people who are trying to take over the land. So I had the limitation of working with a man who really didn't really care so much about the finish and the outcome, and therefore train him. Of course, now he's done a much better job, but that was what he tried to attempt earlier, and then that's what we ended up seeing as the outcome finally. And yes, so that's what the Ratra bond wall ends up looking like. It has a very English bond feel, which is quite nice because in contrast to what we usually do with these bricks, we always assume they are to be plastered. And as I say it, if I can say it, I'm saying like you put a chaddi on them. And why do you have to cover it all up, right, all the time? It can be just itself and it naturally there. Why have to cover it always? So not wanting to cover them at all, of course the client did not know we were not going to do that. It slowly we put the idea into her as we went into the project, but wanted to keep the walls as bare. And then there's using the same bricks as a jali in certain parts of the spaces, just again creating, not kind of prototyping, picking up a jali ready in the market, coming from Vietnam, coming from wherever, and sticking it in here. Just do our own thing, allow the craftsmen to design and create theirs. And a roofing system which is made with these precast arch panels. Earlier there used to be jack-up roofs, and these precast panels became the roofing for some parts of the house. And the rest of the roofs we just left them bare, not wanting to again plaster and cover them up. And that's how the house kind of turns out to be. This is that living space, that little triangular projection that goes and connects all the way. And now around the tulip tree, there is a tree house. So that tree house is what the father decided to make for the children, and that connects her. So she sits on her sofa and watches the children play. And that's how the garden feels from otherwise. So that is a little solace area that gives her a buffer from her sister-in-law neighbor. And you see how the bare material, which was again an ordinary brick, very little faith, every single person, including the mason, asked the same question: will this brick not wear off? And the answer is no. The answer lies in design. The answer is that if you are sensitive about small aspects of the material, and just like you cannot make a rice khichdi the same way you make it with kudo millet, or you can make it with a rajmudi rice, you have to have a different technique for every base material. You need to be able to respect the material and have a design that revolves around that. And these little projected roofs that you see on the periphery, which not only add a little shading, but are also the ones that take care of the walls. Um, they're like little hats. So if you have a good hat and good boots, you can walk through any amount of rain. And that's what a building needs as well. That's how the house kind of feels from without, a textured, plastered wall on the outside, because there was too much of brick, so we needed to visually break it. And like I said, that the aesthetics and the design are more primary than anything else. So we're not wanting to be so cutthroat about material that we don't want it to look good. And if tomorrow, for some reason, they have to plaster and paint this whole house, for whatever reason, down 20 years or so, we still wanted to have an aesthetic, which is its innate aesthetic of the design and the placement and the composition of the massing. Um, and the material basically stays so. This, it's been 6 years, and the house is exactly as is. This is a quota flooring, and because it was a large area and we did want to break it with Atangudi tiles and bring that, but basically a seamless large space. Of course, there is a visual feel that you get of the roof extended, just because we painted the roof white, uh, but we did not plaster it. That's her little nook, and she has immense number of plants. In fact, the minute we finished the house, she started an Insta handle, and for 5 6 years she is obsessively posts about the house. Basically picked up the tile below, brought it to the roof, brought light from there, because the whereabouts was they were very there were too many apartments on the outside. She, a single woman, did feel vulnerable. They did have intrusion as well, but the light from the roof, nobody can ever debate. You can always have that. So the sky is the light. And she says that she just follows the light all through the day in her house now. This is where her library in her where she works out of. That's her dance studio. This is Ravi doing a really fantastic photo of it. It is not as much as it looks. He's kind of mirrored the image. So that's her dance studio, and she also teaches dance. So this is that what happens at the topmost floor, and there is just the jali with mosquito mesh shutter, so it's always cool. And that's where the arch panel roofs comes into the play. And if you can see, it doesn't use any steel, and we obviously minimize on the material and its impact there. And she has this Juliet balcony outside. And why we call it the Juliet? Because of course she was single, and then there was a possibility of her, and we decided to have the tree right next to the Juliet balcony. So if somebody had to ever climb it, just some fun, because life is sufficiently serious to not have some fun. So you have to have some fun. So that's how the arch panels and the children's room and that would. So that's about Swasti. Thank you. The third project that I wanted to discuss with you, very different from the rest. And again, I've chosen materials, projects with different materials, so that you can see that material is not really the king, but it basically is a supporter of your projects. Tatva is the community center at Vanantara Forest Farms, and this is the second generation client that I ended up working with, so you can tell how long I've worked. But it's like how nicely they call it a community center, not a clubhouse, because this clubhouse is such a like thing, and I feel very, very removed from it. But a community center is such a nice resonation. So I wanted to be involved with this project because they really converted an absolutely deforested land into an afforested place, and it's now a jungle in a very cute, in a very nice way. So that's what the property was, as a part of 100-acre land. So then it was 22 when we started the project, but now 100-acre property, and that's where the community center sits. All I want to bring your attention to is the trees. There were two trees there, a tree there, and a tree there. And what we wanted is to basically, of course, you can see there's a lot more afforestation now, but I wanted to tie the trees into the project. But the project began far before we got involved. Am I seeing it right? Yeah. And there was a proposed clubhouse already by a very well-known architectural studio, which was to already happen. But for some reason, they hadn't situated it in on the property, and the client did not see if that was what was right or not for them. So what we did is rethink the requirements and relook at the scope of what we really needed and how much we needed. Earlier, it was about 23,000 square foot approximately proposed, And then what we decided to do was about 9,000 odd square foot of it, which we think is more than enough for the kind of purpose that it served. I kind of feel ethically okay with doing that, and I know that it kind of it's a contradiction to what one does as an architect and how one earns money, but being not being comfortable with it for a long time is what I would never be okay with. So the idea is always to kind of help people resize, relook at their needs. And we live in a time where there is no real need; everything is a want. So how we broke that mass into it is basically create a help quarters on one side. The white part are the open parts within the structure, and you see the only the black bits are the built. Everything else is basically unbuilt, and you just transition through. The intention was for the building to be a non-building, just like it was previously as well. If you see in both the projects, that we don't want the building to say, hey, I'm here. We want the building to just be, so that you experience it rather than anything else. So it needed to be a non-building where it just framed the outside inside. That's it. So this was obviously the natural axis that one took. The trees are actually even more centrally positioned than they look here, but the axis between two trees, which became the entry, you saw all through the building, and one of the older trees on the property, and vice versa on the other direction. So all you saw was basically feel connected to the outside at all points. I keep forgetting, I'm sorry. And that's how the design turned out. The health quarters there, the kitchen, cafeteria, and the toilet structure, a bio pool in the center. I'm never comfortable with a swimming pool that uses a lot of oxygenation systems and a lot of chlorine in it. I like the idea of a natural water body. All of you would swim in a sea. All of us would swim in a lake. So why not a bio pool? So biopool here, a reception entry, but no doors. The building has no doors. There are only some spaces that ended up having doors because it's a community center. What do you need doors for? And then there is a guest house accommodation over here, because there are a lot of people, about 100 properties, people own a lot of pieces of land. They're not yet wanting to build or do anything, but just come and enjoy the forest. So they wanted to stay there. These are the two. There was a pongemia and a silk, a Singapore cherry that were already present, and there was a big natural water body here, which only was a rain water body. And I wanted the entry to be framed by these. We'll come to how we did that. The site also had its own contours and offered certain materials. So, coming to the materiality and the language that it offered us, we already had these boulders which were very easily available, very tough to work with, because you could not really build a foundation with a roundish stone that did not have a shape to it. And the other issue was that the soil was very different here. It is extremely sandy. It does not have a hold in it. And that was also one of the reasons it was a very deforested land, because the root system was not really doing very well of the trees and the plants on it. So the challenge was, what material do we work with, and how do we work with what is already available to us with very little modulation, and ensuring that the economics of it did not go haywire. So what we did was, we did not rammed earth, because it looks very similar, but it is mud concrete. We ended up using, because it's already sand, so it's sandy. The soil was very sandy. It behaved like the smaller aggregate. We added the larger aggregate and cement to it, and allowed it to be the walls. So we used them as the material, and all the walls ended up becoming mud concrete. So it used, of course, a lot less cement. And then the boulders became walls like this. They were the more tougher fellows to work with, but they brought a very interesting texture, and that's how a designer thinks. There's a very interesting texture, but I did not want to overwhelm the hell out of myself. So we knew where we wanted to place it and where we did not want to place it, and how we want to break it with the the simple and the plain with the texture. That's the plan. One would enter in here, come to the reception, come to a veranda on all sides, a courtyard on the three, have a little cafeteria like space, and basically the openings allowing me to see through and through all the way. The site also stood on a contour, so we had to ensure that we were respecting it and not building it up too much, because the building had to be and feel humble and welcoming rather than having a very arrogant experience to it. So we did not want it to be too elevated, and it anyways graduated and one experienced the landscape over. And that's how the sections evolved, that you saw that you stepped into the court and then you got lower and then you connected outward and vice versa. And that's how the space looks and feels. That's the central courtyard. One has arrived into the veranda, and on the right is a lounge area, which is a study of a sort. Otherwise, everything is semi-open. That's the play deck area, and one sees through the tree, the pongemia tree at the end over here. That's the pongemia tree that has even become more lush and beautiful. And in the reverse direction, also one sees that the nature gets framed in the other direction. We left those ceilings bare, the walls are so, it just is a part right now of the outside. That's the bio pool, and it connecting again to the trees in the back. If I was in the lounge, I would see the outside get framed in like so. And that's how the outside is now. Even more lush, actually. The photographs were earlier on. The contours allow for, we put all the boulders down so that we bring let the water collect and then bring it all into the rain fed water body that is already on the other side. So all the water kind of moves there, and we want to be able to collect it. The stone wall became a backdrop to the bio pool. It's just spaces where people can be. And that's the entry now framed by the Singapore cherry and the pongemia. And that's all. Thank you. This is what I strongly feel, that good design is knowing when to not do, because doing is very easy, and doing a lot and doing too much is easy. And just like it is with food, which I really badly need to learn, but to not do is, and hold and restraint is perhaps the best way to approach design. And to me, sustainability is that. Sustainability is the restraint you would bring into the way you look at product and design and life per se, and to ask yourself the question, do I really need this? And that is where sensitivity really plays a big role, where you become extremely sensitive to what you feel, what somebody else wants, feels, is, and needed. Do we really need this? Do I really want this? That's it. Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, anything else?
Doubt. Yes.
Wait. Can he give you a mic? Because otherwise.
No, I can hear him.
No, for the.
So the CSEB, can they only be put together using cement? Or is
Brine
there...
or cement, yes. The intention was that. The You do know how CSCB is, right? What it is. So it was basically an answer to the problem that existed, where people, not people, but with the construction industry and the big boom that happened in Bangalore of the construction industry growing, we ended up needing a lot of bricks, because the brick was the best answer to the construction industry. And what did we do for manufacturing the bricks? Because there is very poor soil in this part of the country, it's very sandy in nature. It is not very clay, and good bricks are from clay. So what people started doing, the farmers who were basically growing food on with a lot of chemical and pesticide invested food, started renting out their pieces of land to brick making factories. The brick making factories started sieving the soil, separating the organic matter, the clay and the sand, selling sand separately, making bricks out of the clay, and the organic matter went away. So what started happening was this uh, big issue with the farming community itself and the food production. So we took away all the humus and all the organic matter in the soil in the process of making these clay, burnt clay bricks, and then again using more firewood and coal to be able to produce these bricks. So there was a big problem in the core. And the answer to that was to use the soil, which is under the organic part of the soil, meaning the first 9 inches to a foot of the soil, first top strata, basically has organic and humus in it. And you do not need the other part of the soil, the one that is below, that strata is not very regenerative by itself. It does need additional help. So using that soil to be able to make the mud blocks, storing away the soil with the organic matter on the side for the purpose of growing food or plants, whatever you would like to, and making these blocks with this soil, because you were anyways excavating and you had all this soil. So what would you do with it? And at that time, when 2.5 decades back, when the ISC professors invented the CSEB block, it was something that was really a necessity as a call for the hour. So you use the waste, which is soil, which was considered waste then, not no more, thankfully. The quarry dust, which was also a waste, which again is no more a waste. I don't know if thankfully, but thankfully, everything should have a value. And then cement as only a 7% of this whole mix. So it's a 9 kilos, and 7% of that 9 kilos is cement or lime or a mixture of the two, as long as you have to be able to rest the blocks. So the blocks kind of behave like concrete, and when allowed to set, and unlike the bricks which need burning, these don't need that. So you can just let them set. So yes, the cement performs a role. I am not anti-cement, by the way. I'm not anti-concrete. In my understanding, concrete has a role to play, but in its absolute necessity only. It's like carbohydrates. Like we're in perimenopause and everybody tells us you should not eat this and shouldn't eat that and that should be there. And everybody's talking about food really crazy. This much nutrient and this much protein and that much vitamin and that much whatever. And it's just very confusing. But if everything is done in the least necessity way, it doesn't harm anybody or anything. In fact, nature is okay to grow on a cement block if you allow it to, but we don't like it.
Sure, thanks for that. And also in the first example of the Good Bricks company, the flooring was yellow oxide.
Yes.
So in a lot of traditional houses from where I come from, I've seen red and black. So compared to the footprint, I mean, is yellow just a...
No, yellow is an oxide too.
So it's mixed.
There's a red oxide, there's yellow oxide, there's a green oxide, there's a black and a blue.
Okay, so
there's manganese oxide. So all these are basically a chemical composition which is already an oxide, but you used it sometime and sometime you didn't. Okay. So all your metal is either painted. If you do fabrication, you either paint it in red oxide or you paint it in yellow oxide.
Okay.
Have you observed that?
My last question, sorry, I'm taking a lot of time. Since
I didn't get your name.
My name is Brijesh.
Hi, Brijesh.
Hi. So a lot of these structures are pretty much open structures.
Huh.
So in terms of
security?
No, in terms of the elements, air, dust, how are these buildings generally maintained?
So I mean, the community center is intended to be an open space. So let everybody be and let everything be. I mean, that didn't have a problem.
No, does it require more maintenance compared to
What is the maintenance? What is maintenance to us? Jhadu pocha lagana? What is maintenance?
Maybe not subjecting it.
So those boilers you're saying, so even the last project, there's a big open space. So there is maintenance. You're going to get puppet stars, this, that. So isn't that more...
So sweeping and swabbing or sweeping or swabbing of a space in an Indian context is no new to anybody. But vice versa, if you look at it from the perspective of every 3 years painting the whole building multiple times, isn't that more expensive? Here you engage a human resource to clean up. There you spend a whole lot in terms of a material. So some corporational guy's pockets get filled. I mean, I would look at it maintenance from that perspective. My maintenance would be painting the whole building. My maintenance would be to to take not have water systems in place. So spending on water, spending on electricity, spending on taking care or out of the sanitary systems and sewage treatment systems, that would be a real maintenance issue. But a public space like that, there would always be a caretaker, and any kind of a public space for that matter. Nobody asks that question when we go to a temple. Why is it that these temple walls don't need maintenance? Oh, I saw so many cobwebs in those temples. Nobody's caring about those. Let the cobwebs be.
Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah, lovely projects. First of all, I loved all of it. Great work.
Thank you so much.
Just the curiosity with the mud blocks in the first project. Does it require like skilled labor to work with it?
Yes.
It does, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
There
then,
needs a training, there needs a skill, and the intention is to develop a skill of working with craftsmanship that we've lost, because now we're in this rush to build these
Yeah.
fast-paced buildings that don't care about the outcome of the material.
right. So how are these available, right? So in the second project, there's a use of bricks and then mud blocks. So how do you kind of decide, or what are the limitations to work with mud blocks?
The
I was-
numbers usually decide a lot of things.
Okay.
Uh, and I have observed that the mud blocks, unfortunately or fortunately, are still more economical than most materials. I'm not comparing to cement blocks at all, but it is still more economical. A mud block costs about 28 rupees, about 9 inches by 7.5 by 4 inches, costs about 28 rupees, and it's 2.5 times in volume as vis-a-vis a table mold brick. And a table mold brick today, the basic, ekdam basic quality, would get it at 12 to 15 rupees.
Okay.
So it still turns out to be far more feasible. And plus, because the blocks are larger in size, the amount of mortar and cement that goes in is lesser. Plus, the mortar that we use is a mud mortar and not a cement mortar. So even the cement consumption is lower. So it does turn out to be economically better, and it gives me better climatic insulation.
Right.
I'm able to, because they have denser walls, so they're able to resist heat. We see at least a 7 degree to 8 degree temperature difference in the houses that we design. So
Oh, wow.
there is a lot of that, and the roofing systems, of course. Everything put together give you that kind of a result. Why would you not use it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It has got like a warmer vibe also as compared to
Yes.
the big
Yes.
one.
But I'm again bringing the topic that I'm not here to discuss the materials.
Yeah.
And the point that we've come to such a point right now, that there is such a fascination for the material than the design itself, that every material will ask for a certain design approach, which is very easily forgotten in the fascination of it. And the one who will sell you the idea or sell you the material is not going to tell you how to design with it. So that's where I see the disparity and the lack of faith in the newer processes and the newer methods or techniques.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions.
Goes to Muslim question. No.
Like larger commercial buildings which use these, I would say, green building ethics
Tags.
principles.
So the question I had is this, and sort of an extension of what you were asking. So, do you, as a designer, I know that you've shown us commercial buildings, quote unquote, the way we label buildings, right? Commercial,
Yeah, I
residential.
chose commercial because we're in a
Yes.
similar space.
Yes. But, how have you felt about, is there a restriction on the size of buildings that you feel as a designer that you're able to approach or not? Or because I'm a business person as well, do you feel that your customers presume that there are kind of projects that you will not be able to do? How is it? I mean, do you see that your design philosophy comes in the way of you being a design practitioner in a wider way? Do you feel that way?
And I just, number one, I don't think this wider thing is a necessity. And like you said, that there is a place for everybody to be. I don't feel I resonate with the idea of uh, a commercial or a multi whatever aspect in the first place. The reason is that the minute that you create a problem, of course there is a need for a solution, but then why do I become a part of creating the problem? So when I have 200 families living in a certain structure, I have a problem which will now I have to solve. I don't want to be a part of that problem. I don't want to resolve that. So I think somewhere I also have never wanted to or enjoyed the idea of doing it. Besides, I am a real emotional fool. I have to admit that. I love people, I love individuals, and I love their stories. And my work is always an outcome of their story. And I don't think I'll be able to do that with 200 people at a go, or a mall, or a place like that, where it's not going to be a genuine story. So it will not really ring my bell. That's that. Sorry.
Thank you. I mean, that's a lovely answer. Yeah.
We've done 850 projects so now. We've built, only recently we started building. So we built more than about 50 structures. And every time we build, we see that we need to refine the quality of the work and the workmanship. And we are our best critics or worst critics. The client is okay with it, I'm not okay with it. And I want to do it again, and I want to do it well, and I want to get it done in a way that I'm happy with the outcome. I mean, that is a joy only I can. It's like I'm a potter. I just decide to make my own pot, and I decide to make a shape of it, and I'm just doing my own thing. To me, it's just me and my joy of it. I do not really want to make it so complex that somewhere it takes away the joy and the fun of it from me. So, very selfish. Very selfish.
No, that does answer. I think a lot of us choose to live by an idea, right?
Yeah.
And it's the idea that you choose, live by, and choose to stand by as well. I think that's like so important. What we are doing in contradiction, even we are going more and more niche.
Yeah.
So that the
like,
idea
I
that
don't
you
want to eat at a multi-cuisine restaurant
Yeah.
every day. I go to a multi, like, oh, there is Chinese, there is Punjabi, there is this, that is, उसमें कौन सा order करूँ तो कुछ भी अच्छा नहीं होगा. But I want to be just that niche restaurant that serves the 10 dishes, and of that I will eat one. Because I know that they will have put their heart into it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Totally resonate with that. Yeah. Questions?
Nanika already does similar work. Yeah. Give me a critique.
So I really love how you've approached all of the designs. I think my main I'm here today to understand how you approached all the projects and how you, as you said, more than materials, it's the design for me as well. And kind of how if a client told you something and how you translated that design brief into your way of understanding architecture. I think that is what I primarily wanted to understand. And there's been a lot of times I've called you up and asked you a lot of doubts, and I think that'll keep continuing because now that I've seen your work, and of course I've visited a few sites of yours at Hosachi Guru and a few other places. My intent was the design. I think I'm more curious to understand how you approach. Like when a client comes and says, "This is what I want," and from day one, how do you start the design? I think that is my curiosity.
I start with a long story. I send them a huge questionnaire. I sit with them. I write it. We discuss it endlessly. And in another context, where it doesn't make a business sense that you spend so much energy in that exercise, I think this is where I really tap into their souls of who they really are and what they really want. Because everybody wants what they want for a reason that they don't really share. And what I want to understand is that part that they don't tell me rather than the things that they do tell me. And it's that what allows me to design the way I do. And to me, it's a romancing experience. I mean, I'm getting emotional, but when I design, I get really intimate with the project, where I'm getting intimate with the people and I'm thinking of them so much that it just is something that comes out of me as an extension of them. So to me, it is a very, very passionate, like a drawn experience that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That answer deserves.
Thank you. Sorry.
Can I give you a hug?
You don't have to. You'll be surprised how many times we had kind of arguments
No, I'm not surprised. All of us are a little kooky that way.
I have one more question.
Yeah,
So I have this thing where I'm so emotionally connected
yeah,
to the client, to the project.
yeah.
But sometimes things don't go like the way you
Oh,
imagine.
yes.
So like how do you overcome that? But like and not be still be kind of okay with the change that you want to make and accommodate. Of course financials come in and there's a
Yeah.
lot of reality checks that happen
Oh,
through the
yes.
project,
Oh,
right? So how
yes.
do you like overcome that and still go ahead with the same design philosophy that you hold?
So one is I'm a real serious bully on one end. Other side is that I very unlike what is told in the world of professionalism, that you don't get personal with your clients. I do, and it's a risk because it's a line that one crosses, which is not told, which is told to you this not to cross in the professional world, and I don't think it is the right idea that we've been told, because when the more personal you get, the more freedom you get, the more trust you get, and then the less possibility of they taking it away from you. But the intention with which I get into the project is purely with the intention of doing them well, and the client kind of sees that, feels it, right, is really connected to it. But answering the problem, because there is always this odd ones out and you always find those, I also remain in this place of gratitude that I'm just grateful that somebody gave me this opportunity to do this for them. Um, we are we are not artists. I want to paint. I just pick up a canvas and I can paint. I want to create a sculpture. I decide a piece. This is a piece, and I do that. But as architects, the only way we can create is when somebody trusts you completely with their money, with their dreams, with their aspirations, and completely lets go onto you, and where you get to be in charge and express yourself on that piece of land as your expression of art, right, your creation. I have to be extremely grateful for that, because unless that arrives at me, I am not ever going to be able to do that. I cannot do it. So if in a situation that the client decides to withdraw that engagement and say, no, I want it this way and not what you're saying, just accept it that maybe you have not really got it yet, or maybe they have not got it yet, and I kind of let go. I've learned to let go. I've really learned to let go. I think I have less of my ego attached to it, because where it starts bothering you is when your ego is attached to it, and let them learn it in their own way. And very often than not, they do turn out. And I have a record of almost every single client still staying very closely in touch with me even today after several years. That's because there is a lot more that you give to it than, because I do it for the relationship. So to me it's just relationship. That's the reason. But I don't bother about it too much. I know that maybe I lost the money, I lost the charge. There is somebody who is just not able to let go of the control. They really want the control. You understand who they are. I mean, I try to understand who they are and why they're doing what they're doing, really. Let go. There'll be always another opportunity. That's what. Sorry, it's a philosophical answer. There is no real, like a 1+1 mathematical rule there. I think we're close, yeah. Okay. He's not audible at all. Yeah.
uh, for this like Swasti, it's a multiple floor thing, correct? Multi floor,
Yes.
multi level.
Yeah,
Swasti.
2.5.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for that, the structure is also needed. So how the structure is constructed for that? Same like how these buildings are using column and thing, something
What
like
did he
that.
say? Column?
Columns and beams like that.
Oh,
only?
good question. I
And
never
for
came
the
to that.
second one,
So I'm very restrained about using concrete. I do not promote using a lot of concrete, so that my structural engineer knows as well that he has to, if there is the design needs it, then we do a composite structure. But 99% of our projects are load bearing buildings. or a composite building, where we try to remove the context of the columns and the beams as much as possible. Shallow foundations, if that's what you're asking me, primarily that. And that does not mean, I mean, there's such an old, not an old, actually only the last century after concrete was invented or cement was invented, people started thinking about it. But it's been an age old idea for the past century that you cannot build a building without pillars. Pillar beko madam, pillar ya killa. So if that pillar is not a necessity, it is a necessity created by the corporational world that benefits from you using more cement and more steel. It is not really a necessity to the design. So if you understand design well, you will not need a frame structure. And that also helps the building a lot more, even in terms of earthquakes. The buildings that have shallow foundations perform better in earthquakes or any kind of seismic movement than the ones that have columns. So it just needs a reconsideration. Of course, the design plays a big role, and the soil condition plays a big role, a huge role. So if the soil condition is poor, you have no other go, you go ahead with it. But 99% of the times, we avoid having columns and beams, I mean, columns especially, and foundations that are very heavy. Right now we're working on a project which is close by, and it's a crazy site situation, but the client feels very passionate about that particular site itself. We have gone 20 feet down to be able to find a foundation, because there was a building existing, it was all refilled land, and it was in a really pathetic condition. So we had no other go. It hurts us, all of us, and the client also. It really hurts us to do this, but it's hurting us. And I think it somewhere should hurt everybody a little, when you use too much of something. But we're still doing it.
Because I can't keep the business person in me lying down.
So yeah, I have, maybe it's a very silly question, but I'm still gonna ask.
Nothing silly.
I've heard like from a very long time, like as a child, in our ancestral property, when there are trees and they remove the trees, saying
And
that
the
the
roots.
roots go in and
They
things
do.
like that. And I see that you always keep as it is, do not move them. Will that affect? So the tree is going to get bigger
Maybe.
and the roots are going to go in.
Maybe.
Will it damage the building?
Maybe. But how long after did you have to consider your ancestral home?
That's also true.
How long?
Maybe
At least 100 years, right?
Easily
No building today in the urban world that we live in
stays there.
stays even, or I'm not saying that the building doesn't last, but nobody wants it to last more than 20 years. In every 2 decades, the building transitions. Your life is so volatile. It changes so fast. Nobody stays in the same structure in the same way for 20 years. Why are we making such a big deal about it? The tree does.
Yeah. So haven't you had any of these people telling you this? You're keeping the trees. Will this affect?
We have had, very rarely so, but we've had. There have been one or two like that. But see, it's like finds like, right? So the kind who find me are little like me, or like us, that way. So they like it, they love it, they're okay with it, they honor it. It's what it is. It's not always a site with trees. If we do, then we go yay. But if it doesn't, then it's not, and then we still work around that. But it's very seldom the problem, because you honor the tree and its root system. We make sure that we're not really hurting it. So it doesn't seem to have been a problem. It's not 20 years now, nobody has complained yet.
So what I was asking you about is how much time, from the time that you begin to the time that you hand over, you sort of, you create this labor of love and you gift it back to the, property owner. What is an average time of a project like that? And
it takes anything from the day you say, yes, let's talk about it, till the end, anything from 18 months to 2 years.
That's nice, actually.
Yeah.
That's quite, that's quite
But now we've been
efficient.
able to figure that out. It took us some time.
Okay.
It took us some time because it took us time to do things right.
Yeah.
And we give ourselves that little leeway.
Yeah.
But now it's a reasonable time. We spend about 5-6 months on paper, and then about 18 months on 15-16 months on land.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Just going back to the client and how do you approach clients, it's amazing how passionate you are with the clients. Yeah.
Okay.
So I work a lot with commercial clients and commercial spaces, and many times I've had the brief saying design needs to be sustainable, or I want a sustainable solution. So that kind of goal goes in bold requirement, and many times clients are not even aware on
What
what
it is.
exactly it is.
Yeah.
It just comes down to the commercial part of it, or using the material
Always.
that has got codes and some ratings. So just wanted to understand, like, you have worked with like a very different client base, and when they approach you, are they already aware, or it's you who kind of
They're
like
not
how?
always aware.
Right.
And it takes a lot of effort of educating a lot of them. And some of them still decide to be extremely stubborn about it and stick to their ideas as well.
Okay.
At least I've come to a point where I am not doing, because when we began some 20 years back, then you had to kind of okay any kind of material that the client was pro. But once we became pro at it, then the same client was okay with what we suggested. I think experience says it all,
Yeah.
right? That's where experience counts. Suddenly you become like this senior doctor, then everybody listens to you. When you're a junior doctor, hey, nimge gotilla, everything is on Google. So it's somewhere it becomes, and even today, everybody comes with these Google questions. They think that this is not okay, that this material is not fine. Will this last? We ask questions like, will mud last? Array, what was your ancestral home built with? It was not built with concrete and vitrified tiles, and yet you are pro vitrified tiles and concrete, but you have lost the faith in earth. So there is, I mean, that conversation is a very long, elaborate conversation and a very trying one to that. And some just don't buy it, and that's okay. There is a person, I mean, there is one for each.
Right.
But in the commercial world, sustenance or sustainability per se, in the way it really is really challenging. It's really challenging. It's in what context of commercial it is, and after a point, it's just a whiff waff.
Thank you.
I mean, if I may say that, we actually, all of us are fitting into a larger ecosystem when we're doing commercial. You can't look at your project in isolation. So, what is the ecosystem defined as? And in that, what is sustainability? Even if it is not a patch on this kind of sustainability, you just learn to do a little lesser harm and a lesser harm. I think eventually that's what it becomes.
Yes, and it's just the thinking is extremely different in this. The thinking ways are very, very different. It may be as maybe two different religions, or maybe the way of two different ways of eating food that we talk about. So it is a very different way of looking at life altogether when you are living or selling this idea. It's really very different. So it means a lot of mental shift and a personal shift to be able to work also like that. When you're already in this world, it may not be that easy. When I joined Chitra's office, I remember being criticized for a very long time by everybody because I came from the conventional. I was labeled as somebody who came from the conventional office. And therefore, I would not understand what it means to do a natural or an ecological building, because it was assumed that my thinking would be else. It took me some time to kind of really get to understand what they meant, what they felt, how they were. And it is really, you start from as small as, I have segregated my waste, this is my green waste, I'm composting it, that compost has gone back to earth, and that has produced my food, and today I've enjoyed that food. And that experience from a personal level till a professional level is where it gets connected. It cannot be a disconnected experience of you telling people about sustainability and we not really living by it. It's like that. It's a different world. It's a different world.
But we make our choices, right?
We all make our choices, and everybody should make their own choices. It is just what I feel strongly about, and each one. In fact, everybody who even is with us or has been with us, some 80, 90 of them, everybody may have developed their own philosophy of life or what they believe in. And even amongst those who practice sustainability, there is a different philosophy that each one does. So there is no two have the same thought process, and nothing is really sustainable in that sense in the times that we live in. We're just trying to be a little more conscience based and a conscious based about it while we approach it. That's all.
So I'm going to ask something as like sort of an outsider to this kind of a design. Um, do you think that there is a misplaced sense of romance about, anyway, design in general is something that I feel personally that, you know, when we are younger practitioners, I mean, when we're younger people, we come with a halo in our, you know, heads about certain things in life, and those are choices we make, right? But do you feel that there is one big misunderstanding that a young design practitioner may have about the kind of design that you practice, and that, you know, you sort of, you know, when you work with them, that's the first thing that you fix? Is there something like that?
From the what I see and hear, there's a lot of fascination. Everybody who approaches is very fascinated. They want to do this. They don't know how, but they want to do this. They think this is the right thing to do. And what I also am very amazed about the younger generation is that they're very idealistic, and money is not their only driver, which was not the case with the generation of ours and the one before. They're very idealistic. They want to do the right thing. They want to do it the right way, and that is pretty amazing about them. But I don't really know if there is, there is per design space or per, I mean, there is any particular kind, but they want to do it the right way. Whoever they work with, they want to work for the one that really is invested genuinely into what they're doing. Would I be wrong?
That's a great thing.
That is an amazing thing, which did not wasn't. A lot of our generation was doing their thing only because they had to win the bread. You know, they just had to do it for getting money. But their generation doesn't need to do that, and therefore they want to do the right thing in the right way for a larger good, which is pretty amazing. I wanted to be a part of that generation, you know.
Guys, just welcome her to your generation.
I already am.
Yeah. So, any more questions? Should we wrap up? Yeah.
I also wanted to add a little about how we already got to chai nashta. How we've taken, so this whole thing about sustainability made me a real popper at some point, because it did not make a business sense, because you brought up business.
Yeah.
And I realized that if it wasn't of a monetarily sustainable model, no model really worked for very long. And if I wanted people to do more of the good thing over a longer period of time, one had to have a different way of approaching it. So the change that occurred in the business model that we used is that we decided to turn it into an employee owned company where everybody has a stake in what the company gets, and in the process not only experience a monetary gain but also learn to experience an entrepreneurial ownership of the work you do. And in the process the system itself kind of automatically started thriving and becoming much better. So the sustainability kind of goes across several factors, and just doing an earth building is not the only answer. There are several aspects and several little octopus like legs to it, and one of them that I see is this. And then all these young entrepreneurs, when they start their own practices and doing nice good things across the country, is a real joy. No? Yeah. Super.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Keep the mic.
I think that has got a lot of perspective between a modern construction and a vernacular construction, and I could relate to a lot of it. When I was in Auroville, I was looking at these, the way that the foundation is built with the stabilized blocks, even the ramp bricks. So, each one of us will do a part of our sustainability in our day-to-day life. Doesn't have to be like something we are practicing it. Thank you for giving us such a lovely insights of your projects. Love them a lot, and especially the Satwa one and the forest one, and the even the bio pool.
it's very nice to see such projects coming alive, and hope to visit your project sometime. And yeah, thank you, Lavanya.
Asha, okay. Thank you so much. This is so sweet. Thank you. And it's not a certificate, it's a thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. All right, with that, I think we will have some khana pina, and you guys can pick her brains a little more if you don't want to speak in public and you want to speak to her one on one. Lavanya, please drink up water.